I never actually studied photography. I was a political science and Latin American studies major. And I wanted to get a job at an NGO actually when I graduated from college, and I moved to Mexico, and I couldn't find a job with an NGO, but I always loved photography and had just been kind of doing it on my own. And then I ended up getting a job at the local newspaper in Oaxaca, Mexico, and Noticias de Oaxaca. And that's, that was my first ever job in journalism, and yeah, so that's kind of how I got my start. And then 6 months later, the conflict there broke out. The 2006 conflict in Oaxaca broke out, and I covered it, and then I started streaming for Reuters and freelancing out of Mexico, and that's how I got my start. I mean, I don't know how you cannot do that. I don't know how you can only cover one type of story all the time. I mean, I think there's a lot of stories that, just because they're lighter or maybe they're more beautiful or something doesn't make them less interesting. But then also I think that they're really important humanitarian issues and social issues and stories like the drug war that I'm fascinated with and a little bit obsessed with, that I really want to cover. But then when something like this Jimmy McMillan guy shows up, I mean, that actually wasn't an assignment. It ended up running in the Times, but it was because I found him myself and called them up, and I was like, hey, I'm going to go meet Jimmy McMillan. You want the photos? You want to make this an assignment? They were like, yeah, because I was obsessed with him. But yeah, I think it just comes from your interest in different things. So Great. It's easy for me to shift gears like that. I mean, it's a tough question. Because some things are, were really important to me personally, like the work I did with the Muxes, with this indigenous transgender community in the Isthmus of Mexico. I mean, I spent so long with them. They became like my family, the people that I was working with there. But it's not, it's not the most important work that I've done. Whereas, I think what I've been doing most recently, the work in Juarez, focusing on women and children and the victims of the drug war, the living victims, kind of the people that are left behind, and basically, yeah, just what's happening in Mexico now, aside from just the violence, but the impact of the violence on regular people. I think it's such an important story. So that's the most important work, I think. The biggest challenge is that they get taken advantage of. I mean, people, this is a really tough business to break into, and so people will do things without getting paid, and they'll I don't know, they'll put themselves out on the line, even they'll go off and do dangerous work without the necessary support that they need, just to get a foot in the door, and they're like, afraid to demand what they're owed, what they're deserved to be doing this work, So I think that's a really big challenge, is just people not wanting to help you make a living doing this job. That's one big challenge for emerging photographers. And then, I mean, I never really knew the industry when it was really easy. Not easy, but I mean, I never knew, like, when it was like magazines sending you here and there. I've always gone off and done stuff on my own. But, but there's like a limit to that, I think. I think that's something that's been challenging for me and a lot of my, friends and colleagues that are also considered emerging photographers.